If you're watching this right now, you're part of the kind of audience I love writing for, because you know humanity doesn't back down. Before we dive into today's story of the human prisoner who refused to break, do me a favor, hit that like button, drop a comment with where you think this tale is going, and of course subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when one man turns an alien empire's pride into ashes. Now let's begin. Chains of black energy wound around Marcus Hale's wrists and ankles, biting into his skin as he was dragged across the steel floor. The chains were not metal but woven plasma, a Zareth Dominion invention meant to humiliate more than restrain. Each link hummed with a cold pulse, forcing pain into nerves with every movement. The guards who pulled him along wore gleaming armor, faceless helmets that glowed faintly in the dim corridor. Their boots echoed with mechanical precision, as though the prison itself marched with them. Hale stumbled once, deliberately refusing to steady himself, and earned a savage yank forward. He let the taste of blood linger in his mouth before spitting a crimson streak onto the pristine floor. "Human," one guard snarled through a distorted voice filter, "you will learn respect." Hale laughed. The sound was raw, unshaken, cutting through the corridor like a blade. "Respect? You'll have to kill me first." They dragged him into the central chamber. The room was vast, domed, lined with jagged pillars that throbbed with energy from deep beneath the surface. This was Gravenhold, the Dominion's prison world, rumored to break minds before it broke bodies. At its heart stood the warden, a towering alien with plated skin like obsidian glass. His eyes glowed with a pale green radiance, a predator's stare sharpened by centuries of cruelty. "Captain Marcus Hale," the warden said, his voice carrying without effort. "War hero. Survivor of Meridian. Slayer of Dominion raiding parties. Humanity's champion, or so your people would believe." He leaned forward, expression cold. "Here you are nothing." Hale raised his head, blood drying on his cheek. "If I'm nothing, why bring me here instead of killing me on the battlefield?" The warden's lips twisted in something like a smile. "Because death is too swift. Your kind has spread fast, unearned. You believe yourself strong because you've tasted victory. We will show the galaxy what humans truly are, fragile creatures who shatter when pressed." Hale's laugh was low, steady. "Funny. Every species that's tried to shatter us ended up choking on the dust." The chamber darkened as a series of restraints snapped around him, lifting him upright in the center. The chains retracted, binding him in a cruciform stance. Machinery whirred as electrodes extended, glimmering with blue arcs. The warden gestured and energy surged through the restraints. Hale's body convulsed as raw power poured through him, enough to fry the nervous system of most species. He clenched his jaw, forcing his scream into silence, refusing them the satisfaction. The guards watched, some with anticipation, some with unease. One muttered, "He should be unconscious by now." The warden studied him with calm curiosity. "Remarkable. You resist. But resistance is temporary. Even iron bends." Hale forced his eyes open, staring straight back at him. "I'm not iron," he rasped. "I'm human." The power cut, leaving him sagging in the restraints. Sweat poured down his face, his muscles twitching from the aftershocks. Yet his gaze never faltered. The warden stepped closer, lowering his voice so that only Hale could hear. "You will beg. You will crawl. You will break. And when you do, every world will know humanity was an illusion, a fire snuffed out by its own weakness." Hale's lips curved into a grim smile. "You can try." The guards hauled him away, throwing him into a cell carved from black stone. The walls pulsed faintly, alive with alien technology, shifting patterns meant to disorient the mind. A stench of despair clung to the place, the residue of 1,000 broken spirits. Marcus sat heavily on the slab that passed for a bed, flexing his burned wrists. Pain flared with every movement, but his mind was sharp, unbroken. He catalogued everything he had seen, the resonance of the energy pillars, the rhythm of the guards' boots, the slight delay when the restraints powered down. He filed each detail away as a soldier does because pain fades but information kills. Across the corridor, another prisoner shifted. An alien with deep-set eyes and ridged skin studied him silently. Hale met the gaze, holding it, waiting. After a long moment, the alien looked away, muttering in his own tongue. "Good," Hale thought. "Let them wonder. Let them whisper." Time blurred in the prison. The Dominion designed it that way, days and nights indistinguishable, lights shifting unpredictably. They tortured not just with pain but with disorientation. Guards came often, sometimes to drag him to experiments, sometimes to leave him in silence so crushing it seemed to weigh on the chest. Through it all Marcus endured. Every lash, every surge, every attempt to strip him of dignity only hardened his resolve. He remembered his son's laugh, the faces of his comrades, the battles he had fought for Earth. He remembered why he could not afford to break. Humanity was still young among the stars, still untested. If he gave them a single crack to exploit, they would use it to paint his entire species as weak. That could not happen. Not while he breathed. One evening, if such a word had meaning here, he was dragged again before the warden. The alien's eyes glowed brighter, reflecting a simmering frustration. "You should be broken," the warden said. "Every species shatters in time. But you hold." Marcus straightened, though blood still dripped from his lip. "Maybe your mistake was thinking I'm here to survive." He leaned forward as far as the restraints allowed, voice like steel. "I'm here to win." For the first time the warden hesitated. It was slight, barely perceptible, but Marcus saw it. A seed planted. They tried harder after that. Longer sessions, crueler devices, even psychological warfare. They showed him illusions of Earth burning, his family crying out. He clenched his fists until his nails drew blood, whispering under his breath, "Not real. Not real." His captors cursed when the illusions failed. He was supposed to be prey, but prey didn't smile after torment. Prey didn't analyze their predator's lair with cold precision. Marcus Hale was a soldier, and soldiers didn't die quietly. One night, back in his cell, he noticed a faint flicker in the energy patterns along the wall. A tiny glitch, almost imperceptible. He leaned closer, watching the pulse repeat. Not perfect. Not flawless. Flawed systems could be broken. He smiled to himself, the kind of smile that had carried him through every impossible battle. They thought they were breaking him. What they didn't know was that he was already breaking them. The next time the guards dragged him to the chamber, he looked the warden straight in the eyes and whispered, "You've made a mistake." The warden narrowed his gaze. "And what mistake is that?" Marcus's grin was sharp, feral, unshaken despite the chains. "You left me alive." The chamber fell silent, the weight of the words lingering. The warden turned away sharply as though dismissing them, but something flickered in his eyes. Something like doubt. Back in his cell, Marcus lay on the slab, staring at the shifting lights, every nerve screaming from the day's torture. Yet he felt no despair. He felt the slow burn of calculation, of pieces sliding into place. He had seen their prison's weakness, had measured their arrogance, had tested the limits of his own endurance. They wanted a broken man. Instead they had forged something else entirely. And Marcus Hale was just getting started. Marcus Hale awoke to the sound of iron doors screeching open, the familiar rhythm of armored boots approaching his cell. His body ached from the last session, every muscle raw, but his mind remained sharp. He sat upright slowly, refusing to let the guards see weakness. Two of them entered, their faceless helmets reflecting the faint pulse of the cell's shifting walls. One gestured with his weapon, and Hale rose without protest. He had learned that resistance in the corridors cost energy better saved for real battles. They bound him again with the humming plasma chains and dragged him through the winding passageways of Gravenhold. He noted every turn, every vibration beneath the floor, the faint hum of energy coursing through the veins of the planet. Each trip revealed more. Each moment of agony gave him another piece of their puzzle. The chamber this time was different. A circular arena, stone-like but alive with alien machinery, opened before him. Tiered platforms surrounded the pit, filled with prisoners from dozens of conquered species. Above them loomed Dominion officers, their armor glistening like obsidian mirrors. The warden presided from a raised throne, eyes glowing faintly, his expression carved from cruelty. "This human," the warden's voice boomed, "believes he cannot be broken. Today he will prove the opposite." A gate clanged open on the far side. From the darkness emerged a massive figure, an alien twice Hale's size, its skin armored in scales, its jaw lined with serrated tusks. It roared, the sound vibrating through the chamber. Hale knew the type, a gladiator beast bred for war, used by the Dominion to break spirits in public combat. The chains dissolved, leaving Marcus free. He stretched his arms once, rolling his shoulders, ignoring the blood dripping from raw burns. The crowd leaned forward, some eager, some pitying. Few believed the human could last. The beast charged, the ground shuddering beneath its weight. Hale did not meet it head-on. He ducked low, sliding aside, feeling the rush of air as claws ripped past his ear. He used its momentum, driving his elbow into a vulnerable seam beneath its arm. The creature snarled and swung again, faster than he anticipated. The blow caught his ribs, sending him sprawling across the arena floor. Pain flared, but Marcus forced breath back into his lungs and pushed himself up. He could almost hear his old drill sergeant barking, "Stay on your feet, soldier. Stay alive." The beast lunged again. This time Hale moved with brutal precision. He waited until the last instant, then dropped low, driving his fist into the creature's knee joint. Bone cracked, the alien howled, and the crowd erupted. Marcus pressed the attack, ignoring the fire in his side. He climbed the beast's back, locked his arm around its throat, and squeezed with every ounce of strength. It bucked, clawed, thrashed, but Hale's grip tightened like a vice. Finally the gladiator toppled, crashing to the ground. Hale rolled clear as the creature spasmed, its roars fading into silence. The arena went still. Prisoners stared with wide eyes. The guards shifted uneasily. The warden's expression barely moved, but the faint narrowing of his eyes betrayed his irritation. Marcus wiped blood from his mouth and looked straight at the throne. "You'll have to try harder." That night, back in his cell, whispers spread through the prison. Word of the human who had slain the beast in single combat traveled fast. Some prisoners leaned close to their doors when Hale was dragged past, muttering in their own tongues. He could not understand all their words, but he recognized the tone: hope. It was not long before another prisoner spoke to him directly. Across the corridor, the ridged alien with deep-set eyes studied him. When the guards were gone, the alien leaned forward. "You should be dead." Hale glanced up, his voice steady. "Should be. But I'm not." The alien tilted his head, intrigued. "You fought like a soldier. Not like prey." Marcus gave a faint smile. "That's because I am a soldier." The alien introduced himself as Jorik, once a commander in his people's fleet before the Dominion crushed their rebellion. His voice carried bitterness but also a flicker of respect. He warned Marcus that the Dominion never allowed survivors of such victories to live long. They would escalate the tests, the tortures. They would strip him piece by piece. Marcus listened, but his answer was calm. "Then let them try." The next days blurred into a cycle of punishment and spectacle. Sometimes they strapped him into a machine that drilled into his mind with piercing illusions. Sometimes they locked him in silence so complete it pressed like a weight on his chest. Other times they threw him into the arena against impossible odds. Each time he staggered back to his cell, body battered, spirit unbowed. Jorik watched with growing fascination. One night, when the guards had gone, he asked, "Why do you keep fighting? You know there is no escape. None of us leave Gravenhold alive." Marcus leaned against the wall, his voice low but firm. "Because the moment I stop, they win. And if I give them that, it won't just be me who breaks. It'll be every human they ever capture. My fight tells them what we are." Jorik fell silent, studying him. For the first time, he did not sound bitter when he spoke again. "Perhaps your kind is not as young as we thought." The Dominion, frustrated by his resilience, devised new trials. They placed Marcus in a chamber filled with shifting lights and piercing sounds, designed to collapse perception, to erase identity. Most beings lasted minutes. Marcus endured for hours. When they dragged him out, bleeding from the ears, the warden approached. "You are extraordinary," the warden admitted. "But even extraordinary things break eventually. Tell me, human, what drives you? What fire refuses to die?" Marcus lifted his head, his voice cracked but unyielding. "It's simple. You think you're showing the galaxy what we are. But you're wrong. I'm showing them what you're not." The warden's expression hardened, but a shadow of doubt passed over his face. He gestured for the guards to take him away. Later, as Marcus lay in his cell, Jorik whispered across the corridor, "They will kill you soon. You must know this." Marcus looked up, his gaze steady even through the haze of pain. "If they kill me, they lose. Because I'll already have shown them something they can't forget. You don't need an army to fight an empire. Sometimes you only need one man who won't bend." For the first time, Jorik did not answer. He simply sat in silence, watching the human who refused to bow. And in that silence, Marcus knew he had planted a seed. Days later, dragged once more to the arena, Marcus was forced into combat with two enemies at once. The warden's voice declared that no human could endure such odds. The crowd jeered, convinced they would watch the human finally collapse. But Marcus fought with cold precision, his body battered yet moving with the instincts of a soldier who had survived worse. He turned one enemy against the other, exploiting their size, their rage. When it ended, both lay broken at his feet. The chamber roared, not just with jeers but with murmurs. Even among the prisoners, something shifted. No longer disbelief. No longer pity. Something sharper. Hope. That night, Jorik finally said the words Marcus had been waiting for. "Perhaps Gravenhold has a flaw. And perhaps you are the one who can find it. Marcus leaned forward, eyes burning despite the bruises and blood. Then we start tomorrow. The chains may have bound his body, but the Dominion had failed to see what they had truly created. In trying to break a man, they had forged a leader. The walls of Gravenhold pulsed with their strange, living rhythm, but Marcus Hale no longer saw a fortress of despair. He saw patterns, vulnerabilities, flaws waiting to be exploited. Where other prisoners saw endless torment, he saw cracks in the Dominion's arrogance. Every flicker of unstable energy, every moment a guard hesitated, every shift in the timing of the patrols was another thread in a web he was slowly weaving. Jorik noticed the change before anyone else. The once bitter commander leaned against the bars of his own cell, watching as Hale traced the walls with his eyes rather than his hands, memorizing the cadence of their pulse. "You're planning something," Jorik said one night, his voice low enough not to carry. Marcus looked at him, bruises darkening his jaw but his gaze sharp. "I'm planning everything." The alien tilted his head. "Do you believe you can escape?" "No one escapes Gravenhold." "I'm not thinking about escape," Marcus answered. His voice was calm, but there was an edge of steel beneath it. "I'm thinking about ending it." Jorik studied him in silence, the ridges of his face tightening with unease. "You sound like a madman." Marcus allowed a faint smile. Maybe madness is exactly what they're not prepared for. The days that followed were brutal. The Dominion escalated their trials, forcing Marcus into battles meant to break his spirit. They pitted him against beasts engineered for slaughter, locked him in sensory chambers designed to shatter the mind, and yet each time he returned, scarred but unbroken. To the guards he was an anomaly. To the prisoners he was becoming something else entirely. Whispers spread through the corridors in 100 alien tongues, but they carried the same meaning: the human endures. It was during one of those endless nights, when the lights dimmed and the silence pressed down, that Jorik finally leaned forward and asked, "What is it you see, human? What makes you think you can destroy what none of us ever could?" Marcus answered without hesitation. "Flaws. This place runs on power drawn from deep below. I felt it, heard it in the floor during the marches. The warden relies on it to control the prison, to fuel their machines. But the system isn't perfect. I've seen the surges. If we can disrupt it even for a moment, the whole structure starts to tear itself apart." Jorik frowned. "Even if true, how? We have no weapons, no allies, no freedom." Marcus leaned closer, his eyes burning with that relentless human fire. "We have prisoners. Dozens, maybe hundreds, who hate the Dominion as much as you do. They don't need hope of survival, they need something to fight for. And I'm going to give them that." The following weeks became a quiet campaign. Marcus began to move carefully among the prisoners during arena transfers and labor details. He spoke little, but every word carried weight. When a prisoner collapsed under a guard's blow, Marcus stepped forward, lifting him up. When another faltered in combat, Marcus fought beside him. He offered no speeches, only actions, and actions spoke louder than any Dominion decree. Slowly, eyes began to turn toward him, not with pity but with something far more dangerous: trust. Jorik became his first ally. Though skeptical, the alien commander could not deny Marcus's will. When Marcus saved his life during a rigged arena match, pulling Jorik out from under a beast-crushing strike, the bond between them solidified. Later, in the cells, Jorik pressed his hand to the energy barrier and whispered, "You are no longer just a man. You are becoming a symbol." Symbols were powerful. The Dominion had built Gravenhold to erase them, but instead, they had forged one. The warden noticed the change, the subtle shift in prisoner behavior. They stood straighter, spoke louder, their eyes no longer hollow. His irritation simmered. He increased surveillance, rotated guards, extended punishments. None of it mattered. Marcus had lit a spark that would not go out. One night, as the guards passed, Marcus leaned across the corridor and whispered to Jorik, "Tomorrow during the labor shift I'll test the grid. Watch the far wall. If I'm right, you'll see it flicker." The next day, under the watchful eyes of guards, Marcus moved with the prisoners to a section of the prison lined with conduits. He stumbled deliberately, letting his hand brush against a seam where he had noticed irregular pulses. A sharp jolt surged into his arm, and for a fraction of a second, the lights in the corridor dimmed. The guards barked, but the moment had already passed. Marcus stood, gritting his teeth, hiding his smile. That night, Jorik confirmed it. The walls flickered. Just for a breath, but I saw it. Marcus nodded. "Good. That means it's real. Which means it can be broken." With proof, Jorik finally committed. He began whispering to prisoners in their own languages, lending Marcus's reputation the weight of his own authority. Soon, small groups began to form around them. Broken warriors, gladiators, outcasts, all drawn to the human who refused to bend. Marcus spoke to them directly, his words cutting through exhaustion and despair. "They want us to believe we're powerless," he told them in a hushed gathering during a work shift. "But they've already made their mistake. They showed us their weakness. They rely on control, on fear, on flawless systems. And I've seen their flaw. Together we can make them bleed." One prisoner asked, voice trembling, "And if we die?" Marcus looked him in the eye. "Then we die on our feet, not in chains. That's more than they ever gave us." The response was not loud, but it was certain. Nods, clenched fists, whispers of agreement. The seed of rebellion had taken root. The warden sensed something, though he could not yet name it. He watched Hale during a public session, studied the prisoners' reactions. When Marcus endured another round of torture without screaming, he saw how the crowd leaned forward, how even in their chains they shared a moment of defiance. The warden turned to his officers, his voice sharp. "He is infecting them. Kill him and do it soon." But Marcus had already anticipated such a move. The rebellion was not built on his survival alone. It was built on the idea that he had already won. The prisoners no longer looked to him for proof, they had become the proof themselves. That night, back in the cells, Jorik leaned forward. "The others are ready. All they wait for is your signal." Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, gathering strength from the images that had carried him through every trial. His son's face, the comrades who had fallen, the earth he had sworn to protect. When he opened them again, his voice was steady, unshakable. "Then we begin tomorrow. No more waiting. No more chains. Tomorrow, Gravenhold falls." Jorik stared at him, the weight of those words settling in the stale prison air. "You truly believe this is possible?" Marcus's smile was grim but resolute. "I don't believe. I know." And for the first time since his capture, Jorik did not feel despair pressing on his chest. He felt something else, something the Dominion had never allowed. Hope. The prison was still intact. The guards still held the weapons. The warden still ruled from his throne of shadows. But the tides had shifted. The human prisoner they had tried to break had instead forged a rebellion. And when morning came, the first spark would ignite into fire. The dawnless cycle of Gravenhold began like all the others. Buzzing corridors, guards barking orders, prisoners shuffling through their routines with broken shoulders and hollow eyes. But beneath the monotony, a current pulsed unseen. Every step Marcus Hale took was calculated. Every glance he exchanged with Jorik and the others was another gear in a machine that had been slowly grinding toward this moment. Today was no longer survival. Today was ignition. The prisoners were marched to the labor decks, where conduits ran like veins across the walls, glowing with the Dominion's harvested energy. The guards stalked the walkways above, their weapons gleaming. Hale bent low with the others, lifting a segment of alloy plating, his face blank but his pulse steady and fierce. When the overseer turned, Hale brushed his hand against the seam he had tested before. Sparks leapt, the conduit shuddered, and the lights flickered across the chamber. The prisoners looked up sharply. Jorik's eyes found Marcus's. A single nod. The signal. The rebellion erupted not with a roar but with silence breaking. A prisoner struck first, a wiry figure slamming his chain into a guard's throat. Another wrenched a weapon from startled hands. Chaos spread like fire through dry grass. Hale lunged forward, seizing a shock baton, driving its crackling edge into a guard's chest. Armor hissed, the soldier collapsed, and the others faltered just long enough for the tide to surge. Prisoners who had shuffled like ghosts now moved with ferocity. Centuries of oppression boiled over in a storm of fists, claws, and stolen weapons. Hale drove them forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Push them back. Don't stop." The alarm screamed across Gravenhold, a keening wail that shook the walls. Gates clanged shut, automated turrets descended from the ceilings, and Dominion officers stormed the decks. The warden's voice thundered over the intercom, cold and furious. "Contain them. Break the human. Kill every last one." But the Dominion had already underestimated what they faced. Hale's mind moved faster than the chaos. He directed fighters to choke points, sent the strongest prisoners against the turrets, and used the smallest to slip into vents and sabotage control panels. Jorik fought at his side, his massive frame smashing through guards like a battering ram, his voice booming commands that carried the weight of a commander reborn. The Dominion's precision fractured under the onslaught. For every prisoner that fell, 3 more surged forward. Sparks showered from shattered conduits, smoke filled the corridors, and the very walls seemed to tremble as the grid strained under the rebellion's pressure. Hale seized an officer's sidearm and turned its alien barrel on the conduits themselves. Bolts of plasma struck, energy arced wildly, and entire sections of the prison plunged into darkness. Prisoners howled their freedom, voices rising together into something greater than defiance, a declaration. In the command spire, the warden stood rigid, eyes narrowed as reports flooded in. "They are spreading faster than containment protocols allow," an officer stammered. "Sectors 4 through 9 have lost control." "Seal the core," the warden ordered. "Cut off power to their sectors. Let them drown in the dark." But Hale had already anticipated that. He drove the rebellion toward the central conduits, guiding them like a general directing a battlefield. Every move was brutal, costly, but precise. They crashed through sealed gates, dragging Dominion guards down with their own chains. Hale felt every bruise, every cut, but the fire inside burned hotter than the pain. At last they reached the heart of the prison. The core chamber loomed before them, a vast cylinder descending into the planet's depths, humming with stolen energy. The sight froze even the fiercest warriors. This was no mere prison. It was a wound drilled into the world itself, bleeding power that sustained the Dominion's grip. Hale's eyes narrowed. "That's it. That's where we end them." The warden descended into the chamber with his elite guard, towering and terrible, obsidian plates glistening in the core's light. His voice was thunder. "You dare defy the Dominion? You think one human can topple an empire?" Marcus stepped forward, weapon raised, his body bloodied but unbowed. "Not one human. All of us." The clash was titanic. Guards and prisoners collided in a storm of violence, the sound of steel and bone echoing through the chamber. Hale fought his way through the melee, every strike driven by relentless will. Jorik roared beside him, carving a path with brutal swings. Finally Hale and the warden faced one another, the battle around them a blur. The warden struck like a predator, claws slashing with blinding speed. Hale barely ducked, countering with the stolen sidearm, firing bursts that seared against the alien's armor. The warden advanced, relentless, his strength monstrous. He seized Marcus by the throat, lifting him from the ground. "You will break," the warden snarled. "You cannot defeat what was built to last forever." Marcus, choking, his vision darkening, forced a smile. "Forever ends today." He jammed the plasma baton into the warden's side. Energy crackled, the alien roared, and Hale wrenched free, driving the weapon deeper until smoke poured from the wounds. The warden staggered, fury giving way to disbelief. Seizing the moment, Hale turned, firing directly into the core's stabilizers. The chamber erupted in sparks. Lights flared, alarms screamed, and the humming power turned into a deafening roar. The entire prison shook as the grid began to spiral out of control. Jorik bellowed over the chaos. "The core is overloading. We must flee." Hale looked at the prisoners, those who had fought, bled, and risen beside him. He nodded sharply. "Get them out. Every last one." The rebellion surged toward the docking bays, tearing through the last lines of Dominion defense. Prisoners seized transports, engines screaming as they blasted into the black skies above. But Marcus remained behind, standing in the trembling chamber as the warden staggered toward him, broken yet unyielding. "If you destroy this world, you destroy yourself," the alien hissed. Marcus leveled the plasma weapon, his gaze steady. "You wanted to break me. Instead, I'll break your world." He fired the last shot into the reactor's heart. The core erupted, a sun igniting underground. Fire and energy ripped through Gravenhold, tearing apart walls, shattering towers, sending shockwaves that split the planet itself. The prison screamed as if alive, collapsing under the weight of its own power. Above, in stolen ships, prisoners watched as Gravenhold convulsed. The surface split, magma and fire spewing into the void. What had once been the Dominion's proudest fortress became fragments, burning debris scattered across the stars. In the chaos of fleeing vessels, Jorik searched the skies, his chest heavy. He saw no sign of the human. Yet he knew what Hale had done. The man they tried to break had chosen to stay, to ensure the Dominion's shame was absolute. The prisoners sat in stunned silence as their ships carried them into freedom. Some whispered prayers. Others simply stared at the fiery wreckage where their torment had once stood. And through them all, a single thought burned. One man had made this possible. One human had shattered Gravenhold. But the story was not finished. Somewhere, amid the ruin, amid the fire and the silence, a figure still moved. Marcus Hale, burned and bloodied, clawed his way through the wreckage toward a hangar barely holding together. He found a shuttle, half destroyed, systems flickering. He collapsed into the pilot's seat, forcing failing controls to life. As the last fragments of Gravenhold fell away, the shuttle blasted into the void. Hale's eyes closed for a moment, exhaustion crushing him, but his lips curled into a smile. They'll never forget. The galaxy had just witnessed the impossible. And the Dominion, for all its power, now carried a scar it could never hide. The Chamber of Judgment was unlike any place Kane had stood before. Its vaulted ceiling shimmered with crystalline light that pulsed as if alive, casting eerie shadows across the semicircle of alien officials presiding from their thrones. Dozens of species were present, all clad in ceremonial armor or robes, their eyes burning with a mixture of fear, outrage, and anticipation. He was chained, bruised, and still bleeding from wounds left by the Inquisitors. Yet he stood upright, shoulders squared, meeting every gaze without flinching. "Human," the presiding adjudicator boomed, his voice reverberating through the hall. "You have destabilized half a world, destroyed fleets, and rendered our strongest warriors broken. You are dangerous, unpredictable, uncontrollable. Today you will answer for your crimes against this empire." Kane's lips curled in the faintest of smiles. "Funny," he said, his voice hoarse but steady, "I remember you being the ones who captured me. Chained me. Starved me. Tried to break me." His eyes glimmered with defiance, daring them to argue. "But you failed." Gasps rippled through the gathered council. Some hissed in outrage. Others shifted uneasily, whispering among themselves. The presiding adjudicator's mandibles clicked in anger. "Your insolence is endless." Before he could speak further, the chamber doors groaned open. 2 guards dragged in another prisoner. It was Drax, the alien warrior who had once been ordered to break him, the one who had tortured Kane with zeal. But now Drax was battered, armor in ruins, pride shattered. His eyes, once burning with contempt, looked hollow. The council had intended to parade Drax as proof that their human experiment was contained, but the sight backfired. The once mighty enforcer was now reduced to something less than Kane himself. Kane's gaze locked on him. He didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. He simply held the silence until Drax's head lowered in shame. The message was clear. Even their best had crumbled. Humanity endured. One of the counselors, a serpentine elder, hissed with frustration. "You've infected our soldiers with your madness. Even now, rebellion stirs in the lower districts because of you. Entire garrisons whisper of the human who cannot be broken. You've become a symbol, and that is the greatest crime." At that, Kane tilted his head. "If the truth inspires them, then maybe the problem isn't me. Maybe it's you." The words cut like a blade. Half the chamber erupted in outrage, half in terrified silence. The adjudicator slammed his staff, demanding order. "Enough. This hearing is no place for your insolence." His voice trembled beneath its forced authority. "The sentence is death." The declaration hung in the air like a guillotine. But Kane didn't flinch. His jaw tightened, his eyes never leaving the adjudicators. And then, before the guards could move, another voice rang out. No. It was Drax. The alien, once his tormentor, had spoken. Weak, broken, but with a spark of conviction he hadn't shown before. Every eye turned toward him. "You don't understand," Drax rasped. "You cannot kill him. If you do, you doom us all." Confusion rippled across the chamber. Kane's brow furrowed. He hadn't expected this. The adjudicator's mandibles clicked sharply. "Explain yourself." Drax struggled against his bonds. "I fought him. I tortured him. I starved him. Yet he did not break. Instead he broke me. He showed me what true strength is. Not cruelty. Not fear. Resilience. Honor. Humanity." He shook his head. "If you kill him, others will rise in his place. They already whisper his name. He is no longer a prisoner. He is a fire we cannot extinguish." The council descended into chaos, voices rising in argument. Some demanded immediate execution. Others muttered about the danger of martyrdom. The adjudicator's grip on power slipped with every second. Kane remained silent, watching it unravel. His heart pounded, not with fear but with something sharper, possibility. Suddenly, alarms blared. The crystalline ceiling flickered red. Holographic displays ignited around the chamber, projecting images of rioting in the streets, of garrisons turning their weapons on their commanders, of orbital defense platforms firing on each other. The Empire was collapsing from within. Kane turned his gaze back to the council. "You tried to break me," he said quietly, every word cutting through the cacophony. "But I broke your planet instead." The chamber froze. The statement wasn't boastful. It was fact. The seeds had been sown the moment they thought they could subjugate him. Guards rushed in, shouting about sectors falling, about fleets defecting, about a human name carried like a banner. Cain stood taller, bloodied but unbroken as chaos swelled around him. The adjudicator's voice cracked with fury. Restrain him. End this now. But no one moved. Half the guards hesitated. Some dropped their weapons. The others backed away slowly. Fear and something else radiated from them. Respect. Drax lowered himself to his knees, chains clattering. You are the storm they cannot cage, he said softly. Cain's eyes narrowed. He hadn't wanted this. Not rebellion, not the destruction of a planet. But it had come all the same, forged by the cruelty of those who underestimated him. He took a breath and spoke, his voice carrying over the chamber's chaos. This ends today. Your empire is finished. Your cruelty ends here. From now on you answer not to fear but to justice. Silence followed, heavy and absolute. The counselors, once gods in their dominion, now looked like frightened children. Outside, the sound of detonations rocked the city as the people rose. Cain's chains fell away one by one. Whether it was sabotage, defection, or something deeper he didn't know. But he was free. He stepped forward, past the adjudicator's throne, past the stunned counselors, toward the doors that led to the world outside. Drax followed, limping, humbled. As they emerged into the burning sky, Cain saw it all. The uprising, the soldiers laying down their arms, the civilians roaring with newfound courage. And in that moment he understood the truth. They had sought to make him a warning. Instead he had become a beacon. The empire would never recover. Not because of fleets destroyed or leaders toppled, but because one human had refused to break. And as the horizon glowed with fire and hope alike, Cain whispered to himself, almost in disbelief, this is how it ends. Not with his death. Not with his defeat. But with their world collapsing under the weight of its own arrogance. The universe would remember this day. The day they tried to break a human prisoner. And he broke their planet instead.